Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl. I'm a recovery coach here at Cap Recovery Center. This is our all recovery meeting for the day. In the article I have here is the impact of trauma on addiction, unpacking the connection. It says trauma and addiction are two intertwined issues that often coexist. For many individuals, trauma can serve as a gateway to substance abuse, while addiction itself can lead to additional traumatic experiences. Understanding the role of the impact of trauma and addiction is crucial for recovery, especially for those seeking long-term healing and personal growth. In this article, we will explore how trauma influences addiction, the types of trauma that are commonly linked to substance use disorders, and how trauma-informed care can help individuals on their recovery journey. It says, what is the impact of trauma and how does it influence addiction? Trauma refers to any deeply distressing or disturbing experience that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope. Traumatic experiences can range from physical, emotional, or sexual abuse to accidents, natural disasters, or witnessing violence. The emotional and physiological impact on trauma can linger long after the event, leading to mental health issues like anxiety, depression, or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. For many, trauma becomes a catalyst for addiction. In an effort to numb or escape painful emotions, individuals may turn to drugs or alcohol as a coping mechanism. Substance use can provide temporary relief, but it often accelerates the underlying issue, leading to a destructive cycle of dependence and avoidance. The relationship between trauma and addiction is well documented. Studies show that individuals who have experienced trauma are more likely to develop substance use disorders. In fact, the National Institute of Health reports that as many as 75% of people in treatment for addiction have a history of trauma. This strong correlation highlights that need for a trauma-informed approach to addiction recovery. And taking a look at it, right? I actually, for me, using drugs and alcohol in the past, I created a lot of trauma for myself. Some things happen to us, right? And for me, my personal experiences, mine was person inflicted. I've created my stuff, but some people deal with the physical or mental or sexual abuse and stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons they cope by using drugs and alcohol in the first place. And because I know from being human, right, that we don't like to feel uncomfortable, we don't like to be in distress, we don't like uncomfortable feelings and emotions, and it's hard to deal with things sometimes. And we think it's an easy fix to use drugs and alcohol, right? Use just to avoid, push down our emotions and feelings and avoid what's going on. And in the long run, that causes more problems. Drugs and alcohol, I've learned, is only a temporary fix for the solution we think is a solution, but in the long run, hindsight, that it creates more chaos and conflict, and it can create a lot more problems when we continue to use drugs and alcohol and not address what the root cause is. We have to get to the root of the problem and see what's really going on. We have to find ways to deal with the trauma or deal with things that we dealt with in the past, and we have to find healthier ways. And there's many, many things that we can do. Counseling, therapy, right? There's 12-step fellowships. There's, faith-based. There's many, many things that recovery has shown me that I can, intertwine in my life today to heal and deal from my past. We're human first, right? And we all go through things. Life throws us curveballs on a daily basis, right? So, one of the ways that I dealt with my life was using. So we have to find healthier ways to deal with life and the trauma that was dealt to us, or like I said, my story, self-inflicted. So we have to find ways to get better to cope with life and the things that we went through. It says here, it says types of trauma linked to addiction. Trauma can come in many forms, and each type can influence addiction in different ways. Some common types of trauma that are often linked to substance use disorders include, so here's some of the ones. Number one, childhood trauma. Childhood trauma such as abuse, neglect, or witnessing domestic violence can have a profound impact on an individual's emotional development. When children grow up in unstable or abusive environments, they may struggle to develop healthy coping mechanisms as adults. These individuals are at higher risk of turning to drugs or alcohol as a way to manage unresolved emotional pain. Man, that can hit on many stories and many people's past. Just what I just read there. As we grow up, we go through a lot of stuff. And it says neglect, witnessing domestic violence. There's many things that go on as kids, and one of the reasons why we use drugs and alcohol in the first place. Nothing at all stems from childhood. Everybody's story is different, but for me, growing up, we experience a lot of things, and we don't really have an understanding how much it impacted us. We kind of, tried to put that mental block, and try to avoid our emotions and feelings, and we seek outside things, not just drugs and alcohol, to better to cope with our emotions and feelings, instead of addressing them. And that's what I did for many years. I didn't want to address reality. I didn't want to address the problems that I was going through. I didn't want to express my feelings and emotions and be open and honest and let people know I'm struggling or whatever the case may be, right? I was very isolated. So by me using drugs and alcohol, it was the way to cope with like unresolved issues, and so number two, it says sexual trauma. Sexual abuse or assault can leave deep emotional scars, often leading to feelings of shame, guilt, and powerlessness. Many survivors of sexual trauma use abuse to numb these painful emotions, creating a harmful cycle of addiction. Unfortunately, addiction can also make individuals more vulnerable to further exploration or abuse, reinforcing the trauma addiction connection. Yeah, so we talk about childhood, sexual, physical. There's domestic violence. There's all kinds of types of different traumas. And I think as a kid or growing up, I think I touched on it earlier. Like I didn't know the severity of the things that I was putting myself through and putting my friends and family, and like the trauma I was just causing myself, but the trauma I was causing them also. Like I had an idea, like I was a troubled kid, and I had bad behaviors, and I was creating a lot of chaos and conflict with everything. But like I didn't know the severity of it, and I understand now, right? Since I've been in recovery, we start to take a look at that kind of stuff, and like we like if we didn't have trauma before, sure enough that through the process of addiction, and I created a lot of trauma for myself and others, and how to, I think like the cycle of addiction, right, is like trying to get better, but making the problem worse by using it's like this cycle, like the guilt, the shame, remorse, fear, anger, resentment. Like the stuff that we're doing while we're in active addiction, it just creates more and more and more. And like, how am I going to unpack this stuff? How am I going to break this stuff down? Like, how am I going to get free of this guilt, the shame, all right, and this resentment, the anger, the frustration, and the trauma, and all this stuff. And it's a lot, and it's it's reality, and it's real, right? But like I overwhelmed myself. I created this big old thing, and like recovery has taught me is to focus on one thing at a time, one day at a time, and like we start to break down those walls. We start to break down them barriers one day at a time. And there's I always try to do things on my own, and last time around, I needed help. I needed help a long time ago, but I wasn't willing to receive it, right? I wasn't willing to take direction. I wasn't willing to listen. I was very self-righteous and rebellious. And so like when I, came into recovery this last time, like they told me like, you have to like work on ourselves. We have to work on these things. We can't avoid it. We can't use drugs and alcohol because your past experiences already shows that, when you use, it causes a lot of problems, right? So recovery is about changing our attitudes, ideas, and our behaviors, and just getting better and dealing with the stuff that we did in the past and in a better way. There's many counseling therapy, like 12-step fellowships, faith-based. There's many things that we can deal and heal from our past. It says physical trauma. Physical injuries or accidents can lead to both physical and emotional trauma. Individuals who experience severe pain or disability as a result of an accident may be prescribed opiates or other medications, which can lead to dependency. Additionally, the emotional toll of coping with a life-altering injury can drive individuals to use substance as a form of emotional escape. Oh man, that's huge right there. Right. I think in the beginning, well, for me, and maybe this can touch on to you guys' story too, like drugs and alcohol, I thought it was fun, right? It was a way to party and have fun, being a kid, right? And then it became, I didn't want to deal with reality. I don't want to deal with this, and I want to do things my way. And like, so I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I wasn't willing to listen to anybody, and and avoid my responsibilities and avoid my emotions and feelings by using. Then I started becoming physically dependent on it, right? Then it became more of a problem. Right now, like I started to go through withdrawals, and if we had pain and talked about if we dealt with like an accident or something like that, because like I said, everybody's story is different. But like when we start becoming physically dependent on it, then reality starts to sit in. We start to go through physical withdrawal, not just the mental obsession, but the physical, right? And then when them two collide, the mental and the physical, and then we're stuck in the grip, and it's hard to see a way out. So when we got the physical and the emotional and the mental obsession, it's hard to break that cycle, But like for me, this last time I had to take action and put the work in to get better, and it takes time. It says war or combat trauma. Veterans who have experienced combat often struggle with PTSD, anxiety, or depression. The trauma of war can be overwhelming, and many veterans turn to drugs or alcohol to cope with the psychological effects. Unfortunately, this can lead to addiction and further mental health struggles. Yeah, man. I try not to pinpoint certain things, but this is what the article is about, and I try to see what has you struggled with in your life, that why you turn to drugs and alcohol, right? It can be many things. And for me, it was just the way I grew up. There's my surroundings, the kids I was hanging around with, my environment, wanted to fit in, or thought I was having fun. I didn't want to be the outcast, right? And I started smoking and drinking, and that turned to a couple of days, and it turned to every day, like it was a snowball effect, and one thing led to another. I'm going to harder drugs and causing more chaos and not going to school. I wasn't taking responsibilities for my actions. So like I was a troubled teen, I was very self-willed, if you say, and it got me in a lot of trouble. And thank God I have a second chance to recognize my past mistakes, right? And I can work on those things, because I know for me, when the drugs or alcohol are gone, I still have a problem, right? And that's me. And what do I do about the problem is to work on myself and figure out, my wants, my needs, and what I like and what I don't like, and my triggers, right? And why do I act out sometimes because of somebody said something and the way they say it. So we get to learn about ourselves in recovery, and like that's a blessing, and people help me to recognize things, right, without judgment. We all judge each other sometimes in here, and that's okay. But like ultimately, it's about me and about my life and my recovery, and what am I going to do about the problem that I created, right? So like I can be part of the problem or I can be part of the solution, right? So today I tried to be part of the solution more than the problem, because I was part of the problem for many, many years. It says domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Experiencing violence in a relationship can lead to feelings of helplessness, fear, and isolation. Many individuals in an abusive relationship turn to substance as a way to cope with the emotional pain and stress of their circumstances. In these cases, addiction can develop a direct response to the impact of trauma, making it even more difficult to escape the abusive situation. And I learned this for somebody else. Like we can be invested in relationships, and like we chase the drugs and alcohol, we can chase people. We're looking not just put the drugs and alcohol aside. We're looking for maybe validation. We're looking for happiness. We're looking for love. We don't want to be lonely, so we can chase outside things, and that can be relationships. And we can stick in toxic relationships, and because of whatever the case may be, right? We don't want to be lonely. We think we love the person, and wherever that is, we have to address that, because it's not healthy. I want to have healthy relationships today. In my past, the only thing I had was unhealthy relationships due to my part, right? So since I've been recovered, I choose to have healthy relationships and not participate in situations and people's lives that is toxic or just not what my morals, values, and beliefs line up today. I want them to change. The way I can change is by people, places, and things, and to do something different. This is the cycle of trauma and addiction. It says trauma and addiction are often cycle. People use substance to cope with the emotional pain or trauma, but substance abuse can create new traumatic experiences. For example, individuals struggling with addiction may engage in risky behavior, experience financial instability, or encounter legal issues, all which can be traumatic in themselves. Additionally, addiction can damage relationship with loved ones, leading to further emotional distress. Yeah, I've been through all that, man. It's talking about financial instability. Like I couldn't keep any money, right? All my money went to drugs and alcohol, and I would lie, steal, and I would use other people's money for my substance use. Legal issues, yes, had many, many fines and warrants and jail time. So all that stuff is traumatic, in their own little way, because we create this drug and alcohol. When I use, it creates a monster, and I can't stop when I first start, So I chose not to poke the bear today because from past experience, shows that I can't use substance successfully, and I'm okay with that today, right? I am happy and content without using drugs and alcohol, which I never thought I could say that or even really believe it, because my life consists of using drugs and alcohol from a very young age, 12 years old, to be free from the obsession and the desire from using drugs and alcohol is a blessing in itself. Recovery, offered me a lot of blessings and has given me a life that I don't want to throw away. Maybe in early recovery, it was a little easier to say, the ethics, right? But today, the life I've obtained, I don't want to throw it away because I know it only takes one, and another thing I learned too, like I don't need drugs and alcohol to screw my life up. Check that out, right? I can do that clean. I can do that without drugs and alcohol. How? My bad behaviors, what I say, how I say things, right? The way I think, it's all about that stuff also, which I wasn't willing to change for the longest time. So now, I'm aware of the problem and or problems, right? And thought I just had drugs and alcohol is yes, it was a major issue, but now I'm not using. So why now by working on myself, like why am I still acting out? Why am I still acting out of anger or frustration or being judgmental and stuff like that? Recovery's showed me like that used to be you in the past. We have to change all that stuff. We have to address all that stuff, right? Because if we don't address it, we can lead us back to relapsing, and I don't want to use. So we continue to work on ourselves and continue to take another look and address what's really going on. So that was our all recovery meeting for today, the impact of trauma on addiction, unpacking the connection. My name is Carl, I'm a recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. Until next time, see you later.